Hey guys, tonight you find yourself at the foot of a walled town just as dusk lowers its wool-grey hood over the valley, and the road beneath your boots turns soft with mud straw, and whatever the horses have generously contributed to public infrastructure. Cold stone rises before you damp and dark, while torchlight shivers along the gatehouse, beams smoke curls beneath the rafters, and somewhere beyond the wall, a bell gives one slow, tired note through the river mist. Your cloak smells of wet wool. Your hands are cold. Horse breath steams in the winter air like little ghosts leaving early for better lodging. Medieval travel brochures really oversold this experience. You probably would not last a week out here, not because you lack courage, but because courage does not patch socks, boil turnips, or keep rain from finding the back of your neck. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while the gate creaks open, tell me where you're watching from, and what time it is in your corner of the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You pass beneath the iron teeth of the portcullis, ducking as if the old gate might notice you and ask for a toll. The guard barely lifts his eyes from the brazier where two crooked sticks burn with more smoke than flame. A dog with one torn ear lies beside him, pretending to be asleep, though one eye follows you with the solemn judgment of a village elder. Its ribs rise and fall under a coat the colour of old ash. No one can quite agree whether such dogs are lucky at town gates or merely very good at stealing sausage, but this one seems to have chosen you as a person worth monitoring. Inside the walls, the town narrows around you. Timber houses lean over the lane as though gossiping from roof to roof. Meltwater drips from thatch. Rushlight glows in small horn windows. A woman with a fur-lined hood crosses the mud carrying a basket of coarse bread, and a boy old enough to work but young enough to resent it scatters fresh rushes across the threshold of an alehouse. The rushes do not make the floor clean exactly. They make the dirt feel better organised, which in this place counts as progress. From the river comes the sour breath of wet reeds and fish baskets. From a bakery comes the warm brown smell of loaves baked too hard at the crust and too precious to waste. You follow the bell's echo toward a low hall beside the parish church where beeswax candles burn in a row along the wall. Their flames are small and gold, each one bending when the door opens and the night slips in behind you. This is the girls' schoolhouse, though schoolhouse may sound grander than the truth. It is a long room of cold stone smoky rafters, trestle benches and a hearth that warms the teacher's ankles better than anyone else's. Bundles of dried herbs hang from a beam, rosemary for memory, rue for protection, lavender for calm sleep, and a twist of yarrow that some swear can show a maiden the face of her future husband, if placed beneath a pillow on the right Saint's Eve. Those who tell the tale never fully agree which Eve, which pillow, or what to do if the husband in question has unfortunate teeth. You stand near the back, shaking rain from your cloak, while the girls sit close together in rows, their wool gowns patched at elbows and hem. They are not children, not quite women in the eyes of their town, but balanced on that narrow bridge where every gesture seems to become evidence. A ribbon too bright, a laugh too loud, a sleeve too fine, a silence too stubborn, each may be noticed, weighed, and carried home by someone's aunt before supper. Their ages are counted carefully here, not only in years, but in usefulness. Modesty, dowry, readiness, and the nearness of that dreaded 20th summer. Before 20, the town says a girl ought to be promised married, settled, safely folded into another household like linen in a chest. After 20, whispers begin to sharpen. The mistress of the school is called Dame Avalon, a narrow woman with kind eyes and fingers stained by ink and walnut dye. Her keys hang from her belt on an iron ring, clicking softly whenever she walks. She teaches letters, yes, but also stitches household reckoning, proper greetings, prayer responses, the keeping of accounts for grain and candle wax, the correct way to lower one's eyes without looking dim, and the harder art of listening while older people explain your own future to you. She moves between the benches with a beeswax candle in one hand and a smooth hazel switch in the other, though she seems to use the switch mostly for pointing. Even now it is hard to tell whether the girls fear the switch, the lessons, or the world waiting beyond the door. You watch one girl bend over a wax tablet scratching figures with a bone stylus. Her name is Eleanor, though her friends call her Nora when Dame Aveline is not near enough to hear. She has a bit of river mist still clinging to her dark braid and a plain blue ribbon tied at the end because blue is thought by some to keep envy away. Some swear that envy enters through the left shoulder, which is why older women spit lightly over it when praising a girl's beauty, though this mostly results in damp shoulders and offended pigeons. Nora copies a list of household goods: 2 pewter plates, 4 linen sheets, 1 wool blanket, 1 brass pot, 3 hens, half a measure of barley owed by Martin the miller. Each item is a lesson, but also a warning. A girl who cannot count sheets may be cheated. A girl who cannot mend sheets may be mocked. A girl who owns no sheets may not be asked at all. Near the hearth, another girl practices her letters by copying a marriage blessing from a cracked psalter. The words drift in and out of candle smoke. Obedience, fruitfulness, peace, good order. The schoolroom is full of soft sounds. Quills ticking, wool sleeves, brushing, wood coughs hidden in palms, the low scrape of stools, the pop of damp kindling. Outside, hooves pass through the lane. Someone laughs near the alehouse, then stops quickly as if remembering that laughter after vespers is not illegal but may still be reported. Dame Aveline sets down the candle and speaks of conduct at table. You listen while she explains how a young woman must break bread neatly. Take ale without gulping. Avoid reaching across a trencher and never wipe fingers on the front of her gown, unless she wishes to be known forever as a creature raised among geese. The girls smile without quite laughing. Table manners matter here because meals are not private. A supper bench can become a stage, a test a market stall, where families observe one another in the innocent disguise of sharing pottage. One mother may notice whether a girl serves her elders before herself. One father may notice whether she speaks kindly to younger siblings. One matchmaker may notice whether she has strong wrists for kneading and calm hands for carrying cups. Medieval romance, you discover, involves fewer moonlit declarations than expected, and much more interest in whether someone can manage turnips responsibly. The bell sounds again from the church tower, slow and hollow. Its voice presses against the windows and settles into the rushes on the floor. Dame Aveline pauses and all the girls bow their heads. You bow yours too, partly from respect and partly because the rafters hang low enough to punish pride. For a moment the room becomes still. The candle flames lean. The smoke thins. You hear rain beginning again beyond the shutters, a light tapping on the roof like fingers asking to be let in. When the prayer ends, Dame Aveline asks each girl to name one virtue needed in a household. Patience says one. Cleanliness says another, though the floor beneath her shoes is doing its best to complicate the claim. Thrift, silence, mercy, skill with bread, skill with babies, skill with old people who refuse broth and then complain of hunger. The answers circle the room, mild as doves, heavy as stones. When Nora's turn comes, she says steadiness. Dame Aveline looks at her for a little longer than the others, then nods. Steadiness is praised in this town. A steady girl does not complain when smoke stings her eyes. She does not snap when her fingers crack from winter washing. She does not dream too loudly of Rhodes manuscripts, distant abbeys, or the wide marshlands beyond the ferry. Yet you notice Nora's gaze wander toward the small shelf near the teacher's chair, where 3 books rest under a linen cloth. Books are rare here, costly things made by patient hands, from skin's ink-scraped pages and long hours under bad light. One is a gospel, one is a book of household remedies full of herbs, charms, and advice that may or may not cure anything beyond boredom. The third is a small collection of saints' lives, and its clasp shines in the candlelight like a secret. No one says Nora wants the books more than the dowry chest. No one says she fears the 20th summer already counting its way toward her. No one says a girl may be trained to become a wife, while still wondering who she might be if the road stayed open a little longer. Such things are not said in the schoolhouse. They settle instead in the smoky air, in the damp folds of cloaks, in the pauses between bells. At last Dame Aveline closes the lesson by having the girls rise and practice the old greeting used when a suitor's family enters a home. They lower their heads, fold their hands, speak softly and smile, with just enough warmth to seem gracious, but not enough to seem eager. It is a delicate skill, like carrying a full cup across uneven stone. You try it silently from the back, and suspect you would be married off to a confused goat by sunrise. The dog from the gate appears outside the schoolhouse door, nose wet, tail low, as if it has followed your scent through mud and moral instruction. Nora sees it and hides a smile. The rain thickens, the candles burn lower. Somewhere in town a cartwheel cracks against a rut with a sound like a bone snapping, though no one is hurt. Only the driver curses softly, and the horse sighs, perhaps because horses understand human planning better than humans do. You remain in the doorway while the girls gather their tablets, thread scraps of linen and little bundles of hope they would never call hope aloud. Beyond them the town waits with its mothers, merchants, matchmakers, priests and neighbours, all ready to tell each girl when life should begin, and what shape it must take. The bell before betrothal has rung, and in its fading note you feel the first pressure of the journey, not a shout, not a command, but a slow hand on the shoulder, guiding every young woman toward a door she's told must open before 20. The next morning arrives not with sunlight, but with a slow thinning of darkness behind the shutters, as if the day itself is reluctant to step into the cold. You wake on a pallet near the schoolhouse wall, under a wool blanket that smells of smoke, lanolin and straw. Nearby, the one-eared dog sighs in its sleep, having promoted itself from gate inspector to companion. The bell for prime rolls through the town before the cock finishes arguing with dawn, and you sit up with straw clinging to your sleeve. The girls are already stirring. Nora kneels by the hearth, coaxing life from grey embers with straw and a careful breath. Maud shakes old rushes from the floor into a basket, lifting yesterday's mat of mud, candle drips, crushed herbs, and whatever the boots of the town delivered. Fresh rushes wait by the door, cut from the marsh and dried beneath a roof that leaked modestly. Some swear that sweet flag mixed among rushes keeps fleas away, though the fleas have clearly never attended the lesson. You help scatter the new rushes and they crackle beneath your boots. Dame Aveline enters with her keys at her belt and a little bowl of lavender water in one hand. She flicks drops toward the corners, not quite blessing, not quite cleaning, perhaps both. No one can quite agree whether lavender water purifies the air or merely persuades the nose to be less honest, but the room does feel gentler afterward. Smoke rises into the rafters. First light finds the candle stub stools, wax tablets and ribbons hanging from pegs. The lesson begins with household keeping, because a house Dame Aveline says is a little kingdom, and a wife who cannot govern pots, grain keys, linens, hens, damp corners, and hungry visitors will soon be conquered by mildew. The girls sort peas, beans, and barley into wooden cups, learning measures by touch as much as sight. They count in low voices. They calculate how much coarse bread feeds 6 people on a fasting day, when fish is thin, ale is weak, and an uncle arrives with the appetite of a siege engine. Cecily is asked how to stretch pottage when guests come without warning. She answers with cabbage, onions and oats. Dame Evelyn asks what to do if the onions are gone. Leeks. If the leeks are gone, nettles boiled well. If the nettles are buried under snow, Cecily hesitates and Maud whispers, "Pray." The guests have small stomachs. Dame Evelyn gives her a look, but the corner of her mouth betrays her. Household skill, you understand, is the quiet magic of making scarcity appear respectable. After the measures come linens. The girls unfold sheets from a chest bound with black iron straps. Some are plain, some patched, some marked in red thread with family signs, because linen passes through marriages, births, sick beds and funerals until it seems to remember more than the people who own it. Dame Aveline shows how to inspect moth holes, turn a worn edge inward, and fold so damp does not settle in the crease. There is an old belief that a badly folded wedding sheet invites quarrels into the marriage bed. Even now it is hard to tell whether the sheet causes the quarrel or simply receives blame for what tired people would have argued about anyway. Then come ribbons, narrow lengths of wool and linen in blue-brown russet, and faded green used to bind hair-tie sleeves mark bundles, and say more than words should say. A ribbon worn too loose may be called careless. One tied too fine may be called vain. One a costly dye may start talk about whose purse applied it. Dame Aveline makes each girl bind her hair twice, once for work, once for receiving visitors. The receiving knot must be neat, low, modest, and not so severe that the girl looks either proud or doomed. The door opens and damp air slides in with the smell of wet earth, horse dung, and baking rye. A mother appears to leave mending, and though she speaks only to Dame Aveline, her eyes pass over the girls with sparrow speed. A crooked hem is noted. Sleepy posture is noted. Nora's blue ribbon is noted. Maud's whispering is very much noted. The woman goes again, but her glance remains like a draught under the door. This is the quiet art beneath every other lesson, how to be seen and not harmed by being seen. Dame Evelyn teaches them how to answer without sounding bold, refuse extra ale without sounding proud, accept praise without blossoming under it, and lower the eyes while still noticing everything. You watch Nora practice with a wooden cup in both hands. Dame Aveline plays the role of a suitor's aunt, a creature apparently more dangerous than wolves, because wolves at least do not ask whether your pastry crust is always so pale. "Do you rise early, child?" Dame Aveline asks, "when the bell calls mistress? Do you enjoy fine gowns when the feast requires the mistress? Do you read Nora's fingers tighten round the cup? A little mistress enough to keep accounts and follow prayers. It is a safe answer. It is also not the whole answer. You remember the class book on the teacher's shelf shining last night like a secret. Dame Aveline remembers too. Her eyes rest on Nora not unkindly, and then she moves on. By mid-morning prayer gathers them together. The girls kneel on the rushes while Dame Aveline leads responses for St. Anne, St. Catherine and St. Margaret. Each saint carries a shadow of womanhood the girls are told to admire, mother scholar, sufferer protector in childbirth. Some swear that Catherine favours clever girls, though mothers are divided on whether cleverness helps a marriage or gives a husband more chances to feel corrected. The prayer is gentle, but the meaning beneath it is firm. Learn but not too much, shine but softly, wait but not long. When they rise, breakfast is coarse bread dipped in thin ale with a scrap of smoked fish passed from hand to hand. The one-eared dog receives nothing officially, yet somehow chews beneath the bench. The last lesson of the morning is speech. Dame Aveline places 3 objects on the table, an iron key, a pewter spoon, and a pilgrim badge stamped with the shell of St. James. The girls must speak of each object plainly, respectfully, without foolish ornament. The key teaches responsibility. The spoon teaches service. The badge teaches that roads exist, though not everyone is free to take them. Nora's gaze lingers on the little shell. Outside, the town bell gives another note. You feel the room holding its breath around these girls, around their ribbons, folded linens, modest replies, and hidden wishes. Morning has only begun, yet the town has measured them in silence 12 times. They are learning to keep houses, yes, but also to keep themselves contained, polished, and ready. As pale light strengthens over the rush-strewn floor, you understand that every small rule is a thread, and every thread is being woven toward the same narrow door before 20. When the morning lesson loosens its hold, the girls do not spill into freedom so much as into errands, which in this town is the closest thing to freedom most people can afford. Dame Aveline sends 2 to fetch water, 1 to carry mended sleeves back to the weaver's wife, and Nora to return a basket of folded linen to her mother's house near the north gate. You step after her into the lane, and the one-eared dog rises from beneath the bench, with the grave expression of a creature who has discovered his vocation. Outside the air is brighter but no warmer. Mud grips the soles of your boots. Smoke from breakfast fires hangs low between the houses scented with oats, onions, damp ash, and the faint sharpness of goats. Nora carries the basket against her hip, the linen covered with a square of brown cloth to keep off rain and town curiosity, though curiosity here can pass through cloth doors, shutters, and apparently stone walls if given enough encouragement. The bell for terce sounds from the church tower, its notes spreading over the roofs and settling into puddles where ducks dabble beside the gutter. You pass the broken cartwheel from last night, now propped against a wall like an old soldier awaiting repair. The driver kneels beside it with a mallet and a strip of iron, muttering to himself. Some swear that if a wheel breaks near a gate, a journey or marriage will be delayed, though no one can quite agree whether that is prophecy or merely common sense, since broken wheels delay nearly everything. Near the north gate, mothers gather as they often do, not because anyone has announced a gathering, but because women with baskets, errands, worries, and daughters of marriageable age are drawn together like birds to spilled grain. They stand beneath the shelter of the gatehouse arch, where old straw has been laid to keep feet from sinking too deep in mud. The guard from the night before warms his hands at the brazier and wisely pretends he hears nothing. Men believe they keep gates with iron, keys, and spears. Women know gates are mostly kept with conversation. Nora's mother, Mistress Isolde, is there in a dark wool cloak, her hair wrapped tight beneath the linen coif. She has capable hands red at the knuckles from washing, and eyes that move quickly from Nora's ribbon to the basket to the state of her shoes. She kisses her daughter's forehead lightly, then takes the linen and feels the folds with her thumb. A mother can read cloth like a scribe reads parchment. Too damp, too thin, too roughly folded, too often patched, each tells a story of household order or household need. You came by the lower lane, Mistress Isolde asks. Yes, mother. And did Dame Aveline speak of accounts? Yes, mother. And speech? Yes, mother. And did you answer plainly? Nora nods. The one-eared dog sniffs the basket, finds no sausage, and appears personally betrayed. The other mothers close in gently, as though this is all casual, as though they have not been waiting to ask without asking. There is Mistress Isabel, whose eldest daughter has been betrothed since 16, and now has 2 babies, 3 hens, and the exhausted stare of someone negotiating daily with both. There is Widow Parnell, who knows every family within 3 miles, and can measure man's prospects by the sound of his boots. There is Alice the dyer's wife, whose hands are stained blue to the wrist, and who claims woad settles into the skin of anxious women faster than happy ones. Even now it is hard to tell whether she believes this or simply enjoys having an explanation for everything. They speak first of ordinary matters because serious fears prefer to enter by side doors. The price of barley has risen. The miller's measure is suspect again. A peddler came through with needles that bent after one use. A child near the East Lane has a cough, and his grandmother treats it by hanging a small bag of horehound garlic and blessed thread around his neck. Some swear it works if tied before dawn. Others say the garlic mostly protects the child from kisses, which may indeed prevent certain illnesses. Then the talk turns, as it always does, toward daughters. Mistress Isabel says a girl should be promised before she grows too used to choosing her own pace. Widow Parnell clicks her tongue and says a late match is not always a poor one, provided the girl has linen patience and teeth. Alice the dyer's wife says teeth matter less than a family with a sound roof. Mistress Isolde says little, but her fingers keep smoothing the cloth over Nora's basket again and again, as though worry itself has wrinkles. You stand just beyond them with your cloak pulled close, watching the gate frame the road outside rutted earth, winter hedges a line of bare willows, and beyond them the fields silvered with frost that never quite melts in the shade. This road brings husbands, news taxes, relic sellers, bad weather, and cousins who stay too long. It also takes people away, though not always the ones who dream of leaving. Dowry worries rise next soft but sharp. Linen sheets, a brass pot, 2 good blankets if possible, a chest with sound hinges, maybe a pewter cup if a family wishes to show hope instead of desperation. Hens are useful, a cow is better, a strip of land is best of all, but land clings to families like burrs to wool, and rarely falls loose for daughters. One mother speaks of saving candle ends to remelt for Nora's wedding season, though the wedding does not yet exist beyond size and calculations. Another says beeswax is too costly, and tallow will do if no one minds the smell. Widow Parnell remarks that a marriage begun under tallow candles may still be sweet, though perhaps slightly sheep-scented. Nora listens with her head lowered, but you see the pink rise along her cheek. None of the mothers mean cruelty. That is almost the hardest part. Their fears are woven from love-hunger memory and the hard lessons of being women in a town that forgives men slowly and women almost never. A daughter unmarried too long may become a burden, they say. A daughter married too soon may become lost in another house before she knows her own mind. Between those two fears, mothers try to steer with hands made rough by soap-grain sacks and winter water. A younger woman arrives breathless from the lane, carrying a small clay jar sealed with cloth. She has brought a remedy from her Aunt Rosemary steeped in ale, a pinch of powdered eggshell, and 3 words spoken over it on St. Agnes's Eve. It is meant to help a girl dream of the man she will marry. No one can quite agree whether the dream shows truth warning or yesterday's supper rearranged by sleep. The mothers lean close anyway. Even Widow Parnell, who claims to trust only land records and tooth condition, asks what the 3 words are. Nora looks past them toward the schoolhouse roof where smoke rises thinly into the pale sky. You wonder whether she would drink such a charm if given the chance. Perhaps she would. Perhaps she would pour it into the mud. Those who tell the tale never fully agree what young women wish for. Most certain to escape love's safety or simply one quiet hour in which no one counts their summers. At last Mistress Isolde sends Nora to fetch kindling from the shed, and you follow through the gate-shadowed yard. Behind you the mothers' voices continue low as bees in a wall. They trade names of suitable sons, warnings about lazy households, praise for strong hearths, doubts about men who smiled too much, and memories of girls who waited past 20 and became stories told with lowered voices. The dog trots beside you, nose to the ground. The broken wheel creaks as the cart driver tests it, and the bell's last note fades from the stones. Around Nora, Around every girl in the schoolhouse, love and fear keep speaking through their mothers, and the muddy lanes carry those words onward like water finding the lowest path. By the time Nora returns with kindling, the town has begun to turn itself toward market day, that weekly miracle, in which mud, shouting, bargaining and livestock arrange themselves into something everyone calls order. You follow her from the yard back into the lane where Mistress Isolde hands her a small cloth purse and sends her to buy onions, lamp wicks and a measure of salt if the price is not wicked. Prices in this town are often described as wicked, thieving, sinful, or proof that the end of days is approaching, though they usually turn out to be merely inconvenient. The one-eared dog comes too, stepping round puddles with the confidence of a creature who owes no market toll. The repaired cartwheel from the night before creaks past you at the corner, bound with a fresh strip of iron, and still complaining softly at every rut. Its driver gives Nora a nod, then glances at her basket, her cloak, her ribbon, and her shoes in the same swift way everyone seems to do. Nothing in this town is only itself. A basket is thrift. A cloak is family means. A ribbon is modesty or vanity, depending on who is looking and what they had for breakfast. The market square lies before the church, where the bell tower watches over trade with the solemn face of a saint, pretending not to notice cheating. Stalls lean beneath patched awnings. Merchants set out smoked fish, coarse bread, turnips, onions, wool combs, clay cups, beeswax tapers, tallow dips, iron pins, wooden bowls, and little bundles of herbs tied with a red thread. A woman sells pilgrim badges from a tray stamped with shells, crosses tiny hands and saints whose names she recites faster than anyone can verify. Some swear that wearing a badge of St. Valentine draws kind affection, while others insist it mostly draws pickpockets, because love and theft both favour crowded places. You step into the square and sound closes around you. Gently hens clucking from wicker cages, pigs objecting to existence, coins tapping wood, a knife grinder turning his wheel, wool sellers praising their cloth, and children laughing until a mother's look folds them quiet. Market tolls are collected under an oak post where the reeve sits with the tablet, and an expression carved from old cheese. Every basket, bolt, sack, and beast must be counted. No one can quite agree whether the tolls maintain the bridge, enrich the lord, or vanish into a mysterious hole lined with excuses, but everyone pays because the reeve has two large sons and a very small sense of humour. Nora moves carefully from stall to stall. At the onion table she presses the bulbs with her thumb, rejecting those too soft near the root. At the salt merchant's board she asks the price, hears it, and says nothing for a moment. Silence is a bargaining tool here, and Nora wields it better than most swordsmen. The merchant lowers the price by a pinch. She asks whether his measure is full. He looks wounded. She looks at the measure. He fills it properly. You admire this greatly. Medieval schooling may teach modest speech, but it also teaches how not to be robbed by a man with a scoop. Yet even as she bargains, she's being bargained over in a quieter way. Women at the cloth stall watch how she counts coins. A baker's wife observes whether she thanks the salt merchant. Two boys near the smithy pretend to be interested in horseshoes, while clearly being interested in Nora. One of them has ears red from cold or embarrassment. The other wears his cap too sharply, which is a warning sign in nearly every century. Widow Parnell appears beside a basket of leeks, as if conjured by gossip itself. Her eyes take in Nora's posture, the neatness of her braid, the plainness of her sleeves, and the fact that her shoes have been mended twice but polished clean. A match is not made here, not openly. Still, market day measures everyone. Cloth is stretched between hands and judged for flaws. Grain is poured and watched for stones. Fish is sniffed. Horses' teeth are inspected. Girls are not supposed to be inspected in the same manner, and yet the difference can feel smaller than comfort allows. Family name, dowry, rumour, health, temper, obedience, skill, age, hips, hands, complexion, whether the mother is difficult, whether the father drinks, whether an aunt once quarrelled over a boundary ditch, each becomes part of the invisible price. Dame Avelin's lessons echo as Nora keeps her head level and her voice soft. You stand near the candle cellar pretending to study beeswax tapers, while noticing how the beeswax costs nearly 3 times the tallow. The seller explains that beeswax burns cleaner and more sweetly suitable for chapels, weddings and households hoping to impress. Tallow, he says, smokes spits and smells faintly of sheep. A girl choosing candles for her wedding chest must consider what sort of smoke she wishes her married life to begin under. Even now it is hard to tell whether he is selling candles or philosophy. At the cloth stall, Nora pauses before a length of undyed linen. Mistress Isolde has sent her only for onions, wicks and salt, but her fingers linger on the weave. The merchant, a sharp-faced woman with silver pins at her coif, notices at once. She pulls the linen forward and speaks of sheets, shifts, cradle cloths and wedding stores. Good linen speaks well before a bride says a word, she murmurs. Nora withdraws her hand, not rudely but firmly. Another season, perhaps. The merchant smiles as though she has heard both hope and poverty in 3 words. Nearby, the town's younger girls gather around a ribbon seller, choosing colours they cannot afford with great seriousness. Red for courage, green for spring, blue against envy, white for innocence, if one can keep it clean, which in this town is less a virtue than a miracle. An old woman tells them that tying a ribbon around the left wrist on the first market after Candlemas will show whether a suitor is faithful. If the knot loosens by sunset, beware. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether the knot reveals the suitor's heart or simply the ribbon's quality, but the girls listen anyway. People are kinder to charms than to uncertainty. A commotion ripples near the fish stall. A young man named Tomlin, son of a cooper, has helped lift a barrel from a cart, and several mothers notice his strong back with the calm intensity of falconers sighting prey. He is not rich, but he works steadily, and his family owns tools. Tools matter. A man with tools can mend, build, earn, and look usefully occupied even when avoiding conversation. Widow Parnell drifts toward Mistress Isolde, who has somehow appeared near the baker's awning and speaks softly. You cannot hear the words, but you see both women glance toward Nora, then toward Tomlin, then toward the price of onions, as if all 3 belong to the same calculation. Nora sees too. Her face remains composed, but her hand tightens around the salt purse. The dog presses against your leg, perhaps sensing the strange tension, or perhaps hoping you have acquired fish. Across the square, the monastery bell sounds from beyond the roofs, answered by the church bell overhead. For a moment the market pauses, not fully stopping, only dipping its head to time. Then trade resumes, coins, cries, hooves, feathers, mud. You follow Nora as she finishes the errands. She has onions in a net wicks wrapped in scrap cloth salt sealed carefully against damp. She's also collected without asking the glances of half the square. As she turns away, a woman praises her neat braid. Another says she has her mother's steady hands. A third asks whether she'll attend the winter feast. Each remark is light as chaff, yet together they settle heavily. Leaving the square, you look back at the stalls beneath their patched awnings, at the reeve counting tolls at the candle cellar, guarding beeswax at the ribbon knots bright against grey air. Market day has measured cloth salt onions, wheels fish, and young women all beneath the patient bell tower. Nora walks beside you in silence, her boots careful in the mud, while the town behind her weighs her future as though it were a bolt of linen held up to the light. You leave the market by the narrow lane behind the baker's shop where warmth breathes from the oven wall, and the smell of rye clings to the stones like a blessing that has forgotten to be solemn. Nora walks with the onions knocking softly against her hip, the lamp wicks tucked beneath her cloak, and the little salt packet held close as though it contains powdered moonlight, instead of something that costs too much and disappears too quickly into soup. The one-eared dog follows with the wounded dignity of an animal who has survived an entire market without receiving smoked fish, which may be the nearest thing he knows to martyrdom. Mistress Isolde's house stands near the north gate, not grand but tight-built, and cared for with dark timber ribs, plaster panels washed in lime, and a roof that sags just enough to suggest age without admitting defeat. A row of onions hangs beneath the eaves. A broom of birch twigs leans beside the door. Over the lintel someone has fixed a bent horseshoe and a sprig of dried rowan because some swear iron keeps ill wishes away, while rowan troubles wandering spirits. No one can quite agree whether spirits dislike rowan itself or simply prefer houses with better cooking, but the charm remains. Inside the room is dim close and busy with the soft machinery of household survival. A fire burns low on the hearth. Soot blackens the rafters. A pot of pottage gives off a patient smell of barley leek and yesterday's bones. Rushes cover the beaten earth near the door, while the inner floor has been swept clean enough to prove effort, though not clean enough to challenge reality. A bundle of dried sage hangs near the smoke hole. Beside it dangles a little cloth packet filled with salt bread crumbs and blessed thread meant to guard the house from envy. Even now it's hard to tell whether envy fears salt or merely finds this household too stubborn to trouble. Mistress Isolde takes the onions, counts. The wicks weighs the salt in her palm and nods, with the reserved approval of someone who knows praise can make the young careless. Then she turns toward the far wall where a large oak chest sits beneath a wool covering. Its iron bands are dark with age, its lock shaped like a sleeping mouth. You have seen grain chests, tool chests, linen chests, chests, for keeping feast dishes safe from mice and cousins. But this chest has another kind of gravity. It gathers every eye in the room without making a sound. Nora sees where her mother is looking and grows still. The air is dry today, Mistress Isolde says, though damp mist presses against the shutters, and this is plainly untrue. We should turn the linen. This is how important things begin in such houses, not with declarations but with chores. You help draw the wool cover aside. Dust lifts in the firelight. Mistress Isolde brings the key from a cord beneath her gown and fits it into the lock. The iron gives a low click. The dog places his chin on his paws and watches as if the chest may contain sausage after all. When the lid rises, the scent that comes out is cedar shavings, lavender, old linen, and hope folded so tightly it can hardly breathe. Inside lie the beginnings of a dowry. Not enough to make a wealthy family bow low, but enough to say that this girl has been prepared, that her mother has saved, stitched, traded, mended, and gone without small comforts for years. There are 2 linen sheets, one good and one patched so finely the repair almost vanishes. There are 3 shifts, plain but strong. There is a wool blanket with a border of brown thread. A length of ribbon lies coiled in blue, and another in dull red, saved for feast days, betrothal visits, or any hour when a girl must appear a little brighter than her circumstances. Mistress Isolde lifts each piece and shakes it lightly. Nora takes the other end, and together they fold and refold. Their hands move in practiced rhythm, edge to edge, palms smoothing cloth corners, kissed together, crease laid straight. The silence between them is not empty. It is full of winters when wool had to be stretched, mornings when water froze in the bucket, evenings when candle ends were pinched out early to save wax. A dowry chest is not only property, it is a record of restraint. Beneath the linen rests a small pewter plate wrapped in cloth, a wooden spoon carved by Nora's father before a fever took him 3 winters ago, and a brass thimble worn bright at the rim. There is also a little packet of St. Medals, pilgrim badges and tiny charms tied together with faded thread. One shows St. Anne, patron of mothers. Another shows St. Catherine with her wheel for learning and steadfastness. A third is so rubbed that no one can tell which saint it once belonged to, which somehow makes it more useful, because an unknown saint may cover neglected problems. Medieval bureaucracy may be slow, but apparently heaven has overflow staff. Mistress Isolde touches the packet to her lips before setting it aside. She explains that a bride may carry a medal sewn inside her sleeve for protection on the wedding day. Some swear that if the thread breaks before the vows, the match is ill-starred. Others say thread breaks because people buy poor thread from travelling peddlers. Those who tell the tale never fully agree, yet every mother checks the stitching twice. Nora unfolds the wool blanket and something slips from within it, a sprig of dried rosemary, brittle and fragrant. She picks it up quickly, but not before you see her expression soften. Rosemary is for remembrance, and sometimes for dreams. Girls tuck it beneath pillows to call a future face from sleep, or into chests to keep linen sweet, or into letters they do not intend anyone else to find. Mistress Isolde notices, of course. Mothers notice what candlelight misses. For keeping moths away, Nora says. Mistress Isolde nods. Moths, yes. Neither of them believes only moths are involved. On a stool near the hearth sits a half-finished seam, the needle tucked carefully through the cloth so it will not be lost. Needles are guarded like treasure here. A lost needle in the rushes can pierce a foot, ruin a day, and inspire 3 neighbours to offer useless advice. Mistress Isolde resumes stitching while Nora kneels beside the chest and arranges the medals in a corner. You watch the firelight slide over her face. She looks young in one moment, almost childlike as she holds the ribbon, and in the next older than her years, as if the chest has loaned her the weight of all the women before her. The talk turns to Tomlin, the cooper's son, without naming him at first. Mistress Isolde mentions strong tools, then good oak, then families who pay debts. Nora keeps folding. The dog thumps his tail, once perhaps in favour of oak. Finally her mother says that a household with steady work is no small mercy. Nora answers that she knows. Her voice is calm, but the rosemary in her hand trembles slightly. You feel no cruelty in the room, only pressure shaped like care. The chest stands open, showing linen pewter ribbons, medals, and a future arranged by hands that love her. Yet love can still close like a lid. Outside the bell sounds again over the north gate, and the repaired cartwheel creaks past the window, continuing on despite its crack. Nora places the rosemary back inside the blanket, folds the wool over it, and smooths the surface until no secret shows. Mistress Isolde lowers the lid but does not lock it yet. For a little while the dowry chest remains open to the warm, smoky air, and you stand beside it, feeling how much of a girl's life can be gathered into one oak box, her labour, her value, her mother's fear, her father's spoon, her saints, her ribbons, her hidden wishes, and the quiet hope that when the time comes, she will not be handed away like goods at market, but met gently as someone still becoming. When the lid of the dowry chest finally settles, it does not sound loud, yet the room seems to grow smaller around it. Mistress Isolde draws the wool cover back over the oak, as carefully as if she is tucking a child into bed, and Nora stands with her hands folded before her, the scent of rosemary still faint on her fingers. Outside the afternoon has dimmed early. Winter light has very little patience. It arrives late leaves before supper and expects everyone to thank it for visiting. You step with Nora back into the lane where the mud has stiffened at the edges and the smoke from hearths hangs low enough to taste. The one-eared dog trots beside you, satisfied at last, with a crust given by Mistress Isolde, though he carries himself as if the entire town owes him a roast goose. The repaired cartwheel creaks somewhere ahead, turning slowly toward the stable yard, and each groan of wood and iron follows you like a tired reminder that almost everything here keeps moving after being mended. By the time you return to the schoolhouse, candlelight already waits inside. Dame Aveline has set 3 beeswax tapers along the front table, their flames small and clear, sweeter than tallow, and precious enough that even the boldest girl does not lean too close. The room smells of wax ink, damp wool smoke, and the crushed rushes beneath many feet. Evening lessons are quieter than morning ones. The town outside begins to fold itself towards supper, but here the girls bend over tablets and scraps of parchment, practicing the skills that will make them useful, respectable, and, as everyone keeps saying, without always saying it, marriageable. Nora slips onto her bench. Dame Aveline gives her one brief look, the kind that asks 3 questions and forgives 2 answers. Then she places a wax tablet before her and says, "Accounts." That single word settles like a small stone. The girls begin with household reckoning by candlelight. They calculate how many loaves are needed when 6 adults, 2 children, and 1 visiting aunt must be fed from a sack of rye. They count how much ale remains if a husband drinks more than expected and guests drink exactly as expected, which is to say too much. They learn to mark debts for eggs, lamp wicks, barley salt, and firewood. They learn that a household may look peaceful from the lane, while inside it balances on measures, promises, and whether someone remembered to cover the grain bin against mice. Dame Aveline walks between them with her iron keys softly clicking at her belt. A good wife, she says, knows what enters the house and what leaves it. Maud whispers, "And what sneaks under the door?" A mouse, perhaps insulted by timing, darts near the wall and disappears beneath the rushes. The girls try not to laugh. Dame Aveline pretends not to see the smiles, though her switch taps the table once. Some swear that mice nesting beneath schoolroom floors steal not only crumbs but memory, which is why dried mint is sometimes scattered in corners before examinations. No one can quite agree whether the mint strengthens the mind or merely makes the mice smell festive. After accounts come letters. Dame Aveline brings out the small book of saints' lives from the shelf, the one with the clasp that shone in last night's candlelight. She does not hand it around. A book is too costly for careless fingers, and even careful fingers may carry grease ash, or the mysterious stickiness that follows children bread and public benches. Instead, she opens it herself and writes a sentence on a board dusted with pale chalk. The girls copy the words "Wisdom builds the house." Nora's stylus pauses. You stand near the rear wall, warming your hands around a cup of thin ale that tastes faintly of smoke and obedience. The phrase sits strangely in the room. Wisdom builds the house. It sounds broad as a road, yet here it is being fitted into a doorway narrower than Nora's shoulders. Dame Aveline knows letters, herbs, figures, saints, contracts, and the moods of mothers at gates. She has more learning than many men who speak louder, yet even she teaches with one eye on the future expected of her pupils, husbands, hearths, children, keys, linens, accounts, and quiet endurance. Still the lesson has beauty in it. The girls scratch letters into wax, each mark catching a bead of candlelight. Their heads bend close, their lips move silently as they shape words. Cecily forms her letters round and careful. Maud presses too hard and must smooth the wax with the heel of her hand. Nora writes neatly, swiftly, then pauses to read the whole sentence again, as if it might open if watched long enough. Dame Aveline notices. She rests one hand on the table near Nora's tablet. Learning is a lamp, she says softly, not only to Nora, though everyone hears, but a lamp must be carried where it is needed. In a wife's hand it lights the storehouse, the cradle, the sick bed, the account board, the winter chest. It does not burn for pride. The room grows very still. Even the dog curled by the threshold stops licking his paw. Even now it is hard to tell whether Dame Aveline says this because she believes it fully, or because she knows the world will punish girls who carry lamps too openly. Her voice holds no sharpness. It holds caution, and caution can sound almost like kindness when spoken by someone who has survived long enough to teach. The next exercise is household letters. A wife may need to send word to a miller, a brother, a steward, a priest, a mother-in-law with opinions sharp enough to cut thread. Dame Aveline dictates good wife. I send 2 hens and ask that you return the small pot borrowed after Michaelmas. The girls copy it with solemn care. A borrowed pot, you learn, can strain relations more fiercely than border wars if allowed to vanish. Then comes a marriage inventory. Linen sheets, brass pot, pewter plate, wool blanket, 3 hens, 1 stool, 1 chest, with sound lock, 1 rosary of bone beads. Nora copies the list without looking up, but you see the colour rise in her face. The dowry chest follows her, even here invisible and heavy. The rosemary hidden in the blanket might as well be tucked beneath the tablet. Dame Aveline asks each girl to total the value. Nora gives the answer first, correctly. Of course. The teacher nods. A careful mind keeps a household from want, and may a careful mind keep anything else, Nora asks before she can stop herself. The words are quiet, but they land everywhere. Dame Aveline looks at her. The candle flame bends in a draught. Outside, a bell sounds from the monastery beyond the roofs, slow and faint, marking the hour when travellers begin seeking shelter and housewives begin judging whether the pottage will stretch. At last Dame Aveline says a careful mind may keep the soul awake. It is not permission. It is not refusal. It is a small door left unlatched in a wall. The lesson continues. The girls practice signatures, though many will sign by mark when contracts come. They learn to read numbers on tallies to spot a false measure to note whether a debt is owed in grain or coin. Dame Aveline shows them how to warm ink that has thickened in cold weather, and how to trim a quill without splitting the nib. She says goose feathers are best, though some swear a raven quill writes stronger curses, and a swan quill writes smoother love letters. Those who tell the tale never fully agree, perhaps, because very few people are willing to anger either ravens or swans. Night gathers fully. The schoolhouse windows turn black, reflecting the candles and the bent heads of the girls. Their world is small in the glass, wax light rushes benches, wool sleeves, ink-stained fingers, the teacher's keys, the dog at the door, and Nora's face lowered over her work. Yet beyond that reflection are roads, shrines, markets, courts, monasteries, and fields under frost. Learning does not erase the pressure waiting there. It only gives it names, numbers, and sometimes a hidden place to breathe. When Dame Aveline finally closes the book, she pinches 1 candle to save the wax. Smoke rises in a thin blue thread. Remember, she says, letters are not wings unless duty gives them wind. The girls murmur assent. Nora smooths her tablet, erasing the sentence until the wax shines blank again. But you know she has not erased it. Wisdom builds the house. A careful mind may keep the soul awake. These words remain tucked somewhere deeper than linen, quieter than rosemary, warmer than the last beeswax flame trembling in the dark. After the last beeswax flame is pinched to a blue thread of smoke, the schoolhouse loosens into evening. The girls gather their tablets, scraps of linen bone, styluses, and small private thoughts, then step one by one into the lane where night has settled between the houses like dark wool. You follow Nora beneath the low lintel, and the one-eared dog slips out after you with the silent dignity of someone who has slept through most of the education and still expects credit. The air tastes of rain waiting above the roofs. Supper fires are waking. From one house comes the smell of cabbage and onions. From another, smoked fish warming over coals. From the alehouse, the yeasty breath of weak ale, damp cloaks, and people pretending not to be interested in one another's business. The monastery bell beyond the town gives distant notes softer than the parish bell, as if wrapped in fog. Nora is meant to carry a bundle of account tallies to her mother, but Dame Aveline has also asked her to stop at the alehouse and return a borrowed pewter cup, because even a teacher who speaks of wisdom must still chase household objects across town. So you go toward the alehouse, its doorway glowing amber under a crooked sign painted with a black cock. Inside, rushes lie thick over the floor, though here they have surrendered to spilled ale boot mud and the complicated history of many meals. Smoke hangs beneath the rafters. A boy turns oatcakes on a griddle. A pot of pottage bubbles near the hearth, giving off the smell of barley leek, and something that may once have been cheerful. Men sit along the wall with wooden cups. Women cluster nearer the fire, sewing listening trading remarks with needles sharper than their smiles. At the narrow bench beside the hearth sits the matchmaker. Her name is Mother Sabine, though no one seems sure whether she has children of her own. Some swear that a matchmaker with no children sees other households more clearly. Others say she simply has more time to meddle. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether Sabine is wise, lucky-nosy, or all three in a cloak. She is small and broad, wrapped in dark brown wool with a fox fur collar, a purse at her belt and a string of bone beads wound twice around her wrist. Beside her rests a basket holding apples, folded notes, 2 skeins of thread, a sprig of rue, a little knife for cutting cheese, and a wax tablet covered in names. You sit nearby, close enough to feel the hearth's warmth reach your wet knees. Nora returns the pewter cup to the alewife, who inspects it for dents, with the seriousness of a bishop examining doctrine. Then Mistress Isolde appears from the far side of the room, not quite summoned, not quite accidental. Widow Parnell is with her. This is how plots move in a town not with trumpets, but with women arriving exactly when they meant to, and saying they were just passing. Mother Sabine looks up. Her eyes are bright in a face folded by weather candle smoke and the long practice of knowing too much. "Ah," she says, the schoolgirl with the blue ribbon. Nora lowers her head politely. "Mistress. Can count salt, I hear." Nora's mouth tightens. "A little. Can read accounts. A little. Can fold linen." Mistress Isolde answers this one. Well enough. Mother Sabine picks up an apple, turns it once and sets it down. She has the air of a merchant judging fruit, except the fruit is everyone's future. A girl who says a little often knows more than a girl who says very well. Pride spoils quicker than milk. Widow Parnell nods as if this belongs in scripture. The alewife brings cups of warm ale spiced with a shaving of ginger, save for cold nights and important gossip. You take one and steam dampens your face. The ale is thin but comforting, the kind of drink that does not promise happiness, only that your hands may stop aching for a while. Mother Sabine drinks, then opens her wax tablet with the thumbnail. Names march across it in scratched lines. Sons of coopers, millers, chandlers, carters, smallholders, widowers, second sons with tools, first sons with mothers, men with land, men with debts, men with reputations polished or cracked. Tomlin, the cooper's son, is mentioned. Strong back, good tools, pays tithe. No gambling known, though known does a great deal of work in that sentence. His mother, Sabine, says has opinions but no sharp tongue. This is considered nearly miraculous. His family has 2 barrels promised to the abbey, and work through Lent. He has all his teeth except one chipped in a cart accident, which Widow Parnell declares acceptable, since a missing tooth from labour is better than a perfect mouth from idleness. Nora stands very still. Then Sabine asks after birthmarks. The question comes as gently as a spoon entering pottage, but the room hears it. Mistress Isolde's eyes narrow a little. Nora's cheeks colour. In this town, birthmarks are not merely marks. Some people call them mother's longings stamped on the child before birth. Others say a mark shaped like a leaf means luck with herbs, one like a fish means travel, one near the wrist means a restless hand. No one can quite agree whether any of this is true, but everyone seems willing to inspect the evidence if it belongs to someone else. She has none that matter, Mistress Isolde says. Mother Sabine nods. Good. Or bad, depending on the shape. Then she smiles, showing small square teeth. Do not frown, girl. Men come with stranger markings, most of them inside the skull. A quiet laugh passes around the hearth, soft enough not to startle the night. Even Nora smiles. Sabine weighs other things. Nora's father dead but respected. Mother careful. Dowry modest but clean. Linen decent. Reading perhaps more than required, though. Dame Aveline can speak for her steadiness. Not too tall, not sickly. Hands strong, temper quiet. Age still safe, though time moves like a mill wheel, and does not pause because a girl has thoughts. You feel Nora hear that last part. Age still safe. The phrase settles beside her like an extra person on the bench. At another table, two men argue over whether leeches cure swelling better when gathered under a waning moon. The alewife says leeches cure most men of coin first. A pilgrim near the door shakes rain from his cloak and shows a badge from a distant shrine claiming it protects against bad marriages if rubbed with holy water. Mother Sabine says if such a badge truly worked, every mother in the Shire would wear 3. The fire sinks lower. The matchmaker's tablet remains open, its scratched names glimmering when flame catches the wax. You understand that Sabine is not cruel. She knows hunger debts winter storehouses, and the way a woman without kin may be treated when illness comes. To her marriage is shelter alliance labour joined to labour a hearth with 2 pairs of hands. Yet shelter can have narrow doors. Alliance can sound like a bargain spoken over someone's bowed head. Nora is asked whether she will attend the winter feast. She says she will if her mother wishes it. Mother Sabine approves of the answer, and perhaps dislikes that she can hear the hinge hidden inside it. Mistress Isolde touches Nora's sleeve, not warning exactly, not comfort exactly. The dog rests his head on your boot beneath the bench, warm and heavy, as if to remind you that at least one creature here has chosen companionship without discussing dowry. At last Sabine closes the tablet. Let the feast show what it shows, she says. A steady girl need not hurry like a spilled hen. This is meant to soothe. It only half succeeds. You leave the alehouse with Nora after the cup is returned, the tallies carried, and the matchmaker's eyes stored carefully in memory. Outside the lane is slick with fresh rain. Torchlight trembles in puddles. Behind you, the alehouse hums on full of smoke warmth. Names and futures weighed as lightly and seriously as apples in a basket. Nora walks beside you without speaking, her blue ribbon darkened by mist while the monastery bell sounds again beyond the roofs, counting the hours that everyone says are still safely hers. The rain spends itself during the night, and by morning the town wears a skin of frost so thin it seems painted onto the roofs by a careful but underpaid saint. You wake to the bell before dawn, not loud exactly, but deep enough to pass through wool, straw, bone, and whatever dreams you had managed to gather. The schoolhouse is grey and cold. The last smell of beeswax clings to the table, where Dame Aveline closed her book, and the rushes underfoot crackle faintly, where damp has stiffened them. Nora is already at the door with her cloak pinned close, a small bundle under one arm. Dame Aveline has given her leave to walk beyond the east gate where a pilgrim road bends toward the Abbey Mill and a widow's cottage beyond the fields. There is thread to deliver and a packet of dried comfrey for the widow's swollen hands. Comfrey some swear knits flesh-bone sorrow and sometimes bad judgment. though no one can quite agree whether it heals by virtue by root or by making people feel that something useful is being done. You step after Nora into the waking lane. The one-eared dog follows, of course. At this point, the creature has joined the journey so completely that even the town guard only lifts a hand to him as you pass beneath the gate. Beyond the wall, the world opens in pale strips, frozen ruts, hedges, silvered white bare orchards, distant smoke rising straight from cottages, and the river moving under a veil of mist. The broken cartwheel, now repaired, leans against a post near the gate, while its owner tightens a rope over sacks of grain. The wheel gives one small complaining creak, as if reminding you that being mended is not the same as being silent. Nora walks with steady steps. Frost snaps under her shoes. Her breath rises in soft clouds. For a while neither of you speaks. The road itself seems to prefer quiet. It is a pilgrim road, though not a grand one. No marble stones, no holy banners, no processions of nobles in fur-lined cloaks. Only mud hardened by cold wheel grooves, hoof marks a ditch, crusted with ice, and here and there a little heap of stones where travellers have left prayers, thanks or evidence that carrying stones eventually becomes tiresome. At the first bend stands a roadside shrine beneath a hawthorn tree. A small wooden virgin, weather-worn and blue with old paint, leans inside a niche. Around her hang ribbons, bent pins, beads, scraps of cloth, and a tiny pilgrim badge darkened by rain. Some swear that if a girl ties a thread there without speaking, the road will reveal whether she should marry the man named in her heart. Others say the road reveals mostly blisters. Those who tell the tale never fully agree, but the hawthorn holds many threads all the same. Nora pauses. She does not tie anything. She only touches the packet of comfrey beneath her cloak. "You heard Mother Sabine," she says at last, her voice quiet enough to belong to the frost. "Age still safe." The words float ahead of you and vanish in the mist. You walk beside her, watching the fields widen. Men are already out in the distance, turning dung into a heap near the winter barley, their shoulders bent beneath rough cloaks. A girl younger than Nora drives geese toward a pond with a switch and a voice full of authority. Smoke from a charcoal burner's pit stains the far edge of the wood. Everything has work to do, even the cold. Nora looks toward the road, not at you. They speak as if safety is a door that closes at 20. A rook lifts from the hedge and flaps away, offended by philosophy before breakfast. You do not answer too quickly because the road seems to ask for patience. The truth here is not simple. A young woman without marriage may face pity sharpened into blame. A young wife may find shelter, food, children, labour, and a place by the hearth. She may also find loneliness in a crowded house, or kindness where she feared only duty. No one can quite agree whether early marriage saves a girl from uncertainty, or merely gives uncertainty another name and another roof. Nora walks on. Tomlin is not unkind. This is also true as far as the town knows. A kind enough man with a cooper's tool, steady work, one chipped tooth, and a mother whose tongue is reportedly not a weapon of war. In this world, that is no small blessing. Hunger, after all, has married many people before affection had finished putting on its shoes. A household with grain barrels and winter work can feel like mercy when frost lies white across the fields. At the Abbey Mill, the water turns the wheel slowly dark and cold beneath a skin of mist. The miller's boy hauls sacks through the yard, flour dust pale on his eyelashes. Monks from the abbey pass along the road in pairs, their wool habits tucked up from the mud, their sandals making brave but questionable choices. One carries a lantern, though dawn has come, and another murmurs a prayer against toothache while pressing his jaw. Some swear that carrying a horse chestnut in the left sleeve wards off tooth pain, but judging by the monk's expression, either he's forgotten the chestnut or the chestnut has resigned. Nora watches them go. Dame Aveline says a careful mind may keep the soul awake. You remember the candlelit room, the scratched wax, the sentence erased but not gone. Wisdom builds the house. The words return now as breath in cold air. Can the soul stay awake in a marriage, she asks. The question is not rebellion. It is not even refusal. It is a young woman holding several truths in her hands and finding that none of them fit neatly inside the other. Duty stands on one side, wearing her mother's tired face. Affection stands somewhere ahead, uncertain but possible. Fear walks behind counting years. Hunger waits in the ditches, patient and practical. And beneath them all, quieter than frost, there is Nora's wish for time. Time to read, to think, to feel whether the road under her feet is chosen or simply the only road not blocked. You reach the widow's cottage near a stand of pollarded willows. Its roof is low, its door dark oak, its garden sleeping under straw. Nora delivers the thread and comfrey. The widow, whose fingers are bent from years of spinning, blesses her with a thumb on the forehead and gives her a heel of coarse bread wrapped in cloth for the walk back. She also presses into Nora's palm a little charm made of red thread and rue. For clear dreams, she says. Nora thanks her and tucks it away. On the return road the sun lifts weakly, turning the frost to glitter and then to wet. Your boots soften the mud again. The dog trots ahead, nose low, following scents no human future could hope to understand. Nora breaks the bread and shares it with you, then with the dog, who accepts as if long negotiations have finally concluded in his favour. At the hawthorn shrine, Nora stops once more. This time she takes the red thread and rue from her palm. For a moment you think she will tie it among the other wishes. Instead she holds it, breathes in and places it inside her glove. Not yet, she says. The bell from town reaches you faintly across the fields. It does not command, it only counts. You walk back toward the gate with mud on your boots, cold in your sleeves, and Nora beside you still moving toward the altar. Perhaps, but not blindly, not today. Behind you, the pilgrim road keeps all its choices under frost and thaw, and ahead the town waits with open eyes. By the time you return through the east gate, the frost has given up its silver manners and become ordinary mud again. It clings to your boots' freckles, the hem of Nora's gown, and leaves the one-eared dog looking as if he has personally wrestled the road, and won only by lowering his standards. The town is awake now in its full winter mood, shutters, open hearth smoke, rising hens complaining beneath carts, women throwing yesterday's wash-water into gutters with admirable aim, and men carrying tools as though tools alone might convince the day to behave. Nora should go back to the schoolhouse, but Mistress Isolde is waiting near the corner by the baker's wall, her cloak drawn tight, her face arranged into that careful look mothers wear when worry must not become public. She says the manor court is sitting. Dame Aveline has sent word that Nora may attend not for pleasure, certainly not for idleness, but because a girl who may soon manage a household ought to understand promises, rents disputes, fines, and how quickly neighbours can turn a private matter into a public one. So you follow them uphill toward the Lord's Manor Hall. The hall stands inside a timber palisade above the market square, not a castle, but trying very hard to sound like one. Its gate is oak, iron-studded and damp with mist. A servant scatters sand over the threshold to keep boots from sliding. Rushes lie inside, though here they are mixed with dried lavender and meadowsweet, so that the hall smells half like law and half like someone attempting to apologize for law. A fire burns in a long hearth at the centre, smoke rising toward a roof vent that accepts only some of it. Along the walls hang shields, antlers, old horse tack, and one cracked hunting horn no one dares throw away, because it may have belonged to a grandfather, a hero, or merely a man loud enough to become confused with both. You step in and feel the draught at once. Manor halls are designed apparently to gather everyone beneath one roof, while reminding them that walls remain a developing technology. The Lord Steward sits at the high table with a clerk beside him, a thin young man whose fingers are black with ink. The clerk trims his quill with a small knife and warms the ink near a candle stub, for cold makes it thick and stubborn. Some swear that if ink freezes during court, the judgment written with it will bring bad luck. No one can quite agree whether this is ancient wisdom or an excuse used by clerks who prefer sitting closer to the fire. Villagers crowd the benches, tenants, widows, craftsmen, mothers, a few restless children quickly silenced, and old men who come not because they are involved, but because court days provide warmth news and the pleasure of hearing someone else fined. The one-eared dog slips beneath the bench and lies on your boot, having identified the legal system as another possible source of crumbs. The first matters are ordinary, which does not make them gentle. A boundary ditch has been cleared too far into a neighbour's strip. 2 hens have been stolen, though the accused insist they came willingly. A brewer is fined for weak ale, which seems harsh until 3 men testify that it had less strength than rainwater and less flavour than the bucket. A woman complains that the miller's measure is false. The miller looks wounded in the same way the salt merchant did, suggesting merchants practice this face before polished pewter. Nora watches carefully. Dame Aveline stands near the side wall, her keys at her belt, speaking quietly with the clerk between cases. When she sees Nora, she nods once, approving the attention. Here is another schoolroom, though no one calls it that. Figures are read aloud. Promises are remembered. Debts are marked. Names become lines of ink. A household that cannot keep accounts may lose more than coin. It may lose standing trust, even the right to speak first when trouble comes. Then a betrothal promise is brought forward. Not Nora's, not yet. Still you feel her body grow still beside you. A young woman named Agnes stands with her father near the hearth. Across from them waits the family of a thatcher's son. The matter is not a wedding, but words spoken before witnesses at Martinmas, promises of marriage, a dowry of 1 blanket, 2 hens, and a small strip of garden, and now disagreement over whether the promise was binding or merely hopeful talk after too much ale. The steward asks who heard the words. 3 people step forward at once. 2 contradict each other immediately. The 3rd remembers everything except the part that matters. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether ale reveals truth or drowns it, but the court seems to prefer written marks, sober witnesses, and fathers who do not change their minds after winter prices rise. The clerk bends over his parchment. His quill scratches small and sharp. Agnes keeps her eyes lowered, yet every face in the hall turns toward her, as if she herself is the parchment to be read. Her age is mentioned. 19. Her dowry is mentioned. Her mother's health. Her skill at spinning. Whether she gave consent. Whether consent given near a hearth counts if the household was noisy. Whether the thatcher's son spoke clearly or mumbled into his cup. It is strange, and not strange at all, how quickly a girl becomes a matter of benches, ledgers, witnesses, fathers, neighbours, and law. Nora's hand tightens inside her cloak. Mistress Isolde touches her elbow lightly, not to restrain her, but to remind her she is not alone. The steward decides the promise must be honoured unless the families can prove deceit. The thatcher's mother sighs with relief. Agnes does not move. Perhaps she is glad. Perhaps she is frightened. Perhaps both feelings sit together in her chest, each refusing to yield the bench. Even now it is hard to tell whether the judgment gives her security or closes a door. The hall accepts it as settlement because halls like this prefer doors either open or shut, not trembling on their hinges. After that, a widow petitions to keep her late husband's small garden until Easter. A boy is accused of cutting willow rods from the wrong bank. A carter asks permission to delay rent because of a broken wheel, and you recognize the man from the gate. He gestures toward the repaired wheel outside as if presenting a wounded relative. The steward grants him 2 weeks and warns him not to let the wheel become a habit. This produces a small laugh, soft as ash. Then Widow Parnell speaks. She is not part of a case, not exactly, but when the steward asks whether any households require noting before the next feast, she mentions that several girls near their 20th year remain unpromised. Her voice is mild, her words are not. Names do not need to be spoken loudly to travel. Nora's name is not said, but it hovers close enough that you feel the air change. The steward makes a mark. The clerk writes. A public concern is born with one dry scratch of ink. You look at Nora. Her face is calm, trained by Dame Aveline, shaped by her mother's lessons, guarded by all the ribbons and rules of the schoolhouse. Yet her eyes move to the parchment, then to the hall door beyond which Mud Road Shrine Market and Winterfield still exist. The one-eared dog snores beneath the bench, deeply unimpressed by civic pressure. When the court ends, people rise in a rustle of wool and damp cloaks. The hall exhales smoke, gossip, and judgment into the afternoon. Nora steps outside beside you, blinking in the pale light. Behind her the clerk sands the wet ink. Before her the town waits now, with one more mark beside its expectations. The bell sounds over the roofs, and this time it feels less like time passing than time being counted by someone else. The court's ink seems to follow Nora down the hill. You walk beside her through the lane where afternoon has turned thin and pale. Mistress Isolde has gone ahead to speak with Dame Aveline, gathering worry into shape. Nora says nothing. Her boots leave dark prints in the mud. The one-eared dog pads after you. At the churchyard wall, a group of girls waits beneath a yew tree, cloaks pulled tight, faces bright with the secrecy of something everyone already knows. Maud is there, and Cecily and 2 younger girls from the ribbon seller's lane. Each carries a little offering, a bent pin, blue thread, a dried apple seed, and a candle end. They're going to the old roadside shrine beyond the west ditch, not far enough to be dangerous, but far enough to feel as if the town has loosened its grip by one finger. Dame Aveline has not forbidden it. This is not the same as permission, but in medieval life many freedoms live in that misty space between being allowed and not being stopped. You follow them out through a postern gate where the stones sweat with cold. Beyond the wall, the path bends past winter cabbages, a frozen dung heap, and beehives wrapped in straw. The bell from the town sounds behind you softer now. This shrine stands where 3 paths meet, one toward the mill, one toward the Abbey Road, and one into a little wood of hazel and ash. It is made of stone, with a niche holding 3 figures rubbed nearly faceless by rain and hands. One may be St. Anne, one may be St. Catherine, one may be St. Valentine, though some swear it is St. Agnes, while others insist it began as a very small bishop dragged into women's hopes. No one can quite agree which saint listens best to girls asking for good husbands, and perhaps that is why they leave offerings to all of them. Around the shrine hang ribbons, faded by weather blue, red, green, brown, and once white strips gone grey as old sheep. Pins are pushed into cracks in the stone. Little beads rest beside a lump of candle wax. Someone has left a crust of bread now hard as tile. Someone else has placed 3 hazelnuts in a row, because there is an old charm that if a girl names 3 suitors over 3 nuts, and sets them near the hearth, the one that burns steady marks the truest heart. Those who tell the tale never fully agree what it means when all 3 nuts explode, though most mothers would call that a warning to stay home and mend sheets. Maud ties a red thread around a twig of the thorn bush and whispers so softly the words vanish before reaching even the dog's ears. Cecily leaves the candle end. One younger girl presses her pin into a crack and winces when it bends. The other turns her apple seed 3 times before setting it beneath St. Whoever he is. Their faces are solemn not because they believe every charm without question, but because hope becomes easier to hold when it has something to do with the hands. Nora stands back. You look at the hoof marks, the cart ruts, the brittle grass, the black trees lace thin against the sky. This is a place of crossings, and crossings always gather stories. It is said a bride should not pass a crossroads alone after dusk, lest wandering spirits grow curious. It is said a girl who hears an owl call from the left side while thinking of a suitor should wait 3 days before answering him. Even now it is hard to tell whether people believe these things deeply, lightly, or only because human choice is so frightening. Maud nudges Nora. You have the red thread from the widow. Nora's hand moves to her glove. The charm of rue and thread lies there warmed by her palm since the pilgrim road. Rue is for protection, for clear sight, for turning away ill wishes. Some women hang it in kitchens. Some carry it to court. Some sew it into hems when a daughter goes to meet a husband's family. The plant has a reputation like a stern aunt, not pleasant perhaps, but useful in a difficult room. Name him Cecily, whispers not unkindly. Nora looks toward the town wall where smoke rises behind the stones. Tomlin's name rests nearby unsaid. So do other names, perhaps not of men but of possible lives. The schoolroom, the book clasped the road to the abbey. The careful sentence Dame Aveline gave her like a coal hidden in ash. Wisdom builds the house. A careful mind may keep the soul awake. At last Nora steps to the shrine. She does not tie the thread at once. Instead she kneels and the mud darkens her gown at the hem. She touches the stone beneath the 3 worn saints and closes her eyes. The girls grow quiet around her. Even the dog stops nosing the bread crust, which may be the strongest proof yet that this moment has weight. Her prayer is too soft for you to hear fully. You catch only pieces. Kindness, time, mother, fear not yet if it may be. She does not ask for a handsome husband or a rich one or even Tomlin by name. She asks, it seems, for a good path and the courage to know it. This is more complicated than most charms prefer. When she rises, she ties the red thread not around the thorn bush, but to the small iron ring set beside the shrine niche, where pilgrims sometimes fasten badges before a journey. The knot is neat and firm. Rue hangs from it like a dark green feather. Maud opens her mouth perhaps to ask what that means, but thinks better of it. A cart creaks along the mill road, its wheel groaning in a familiar way, and you recognize the repaired cart from the gate. The driver lifts one hand in greeting as he passes. The sound fades down the road, mended but not silent like so many things here. Before leaving, the girls light the small candle end from a coal carried in a covered pot. Its flame trembles in the wind, nearly dies, then steadies. The light touches the faceless saints, the ribbons, the bent pins, Nora's blue ribbon, and the dog's single lifted ear. Generations of girls have stood here before, feast days before, betrothals before, marriages they welcomed, feared, endured, or came to love. They have left pins because metal feels firm, ribbons because cloth remembers touch, and prayers because there are hours when even practical people must place fear somewhere outside the body. You walk back as the sky lowers toward evening. The girls talk lightly now, too lightly, about ribbons, candles, and whether St. Catherine prefers learned girls or simply has patience with them. Nora walks beside you with her hands tucked in her cloak. Behind you the red thread remains at the shrine, not a promise to marry, not a refusal, but a small bright knot holding open a question beneath the winter branches. The rain begins before you reach the west gate first, as a fine mist that beads on Nora's blue ribbon, then as a colder, steadier fall that turns every path into a narrow argument between mud and shoe leather. The girls hurry close together, cloaks lifted heads, bowed their shrine whispers tucked away beneath the patter of water on wool. Behind you, somewhere beyond the fields, the red thread at the roadside shrine darkens under the rain, holding its little knot beside the worn saints, while the winter branches tremble. By the time the town wall rises ahead, the postern gate is already crowded with people trying to pass inward. A peddler with a covered pack, 2 women carrying empty egg baskets, a boy leading a donkey that has decided the weather is a personal insult, and an old pilgrim whose hat brim spills water in a steady line down his nose. The guard waves them through, slowly collecting a small toll from the peddler, and receiving in return a look that suggests tolls are proof of mankind's decline. The one-eared dog slips between legs with the ease of a born tax evader. Dame Aveline waits just inside the gate, her cloak pulled over her coif, and her iron keys hidden beneath the folds. She looks at the soaked girls, then at the darkening sky, then toward the north road where the Abbey Guesthouse lies just beyond the town's outer ditch. "No sense crossing the lanes twice in this," she says. "We will shelter at St. Bartholomew's until the rain softens." So you go with them along the wet road past the mill stream, swollen and brown, past leafless willows, tapping one another like old fingers until the monastery buildings appear through the rain. Low stone walls, a bell tower, a chapel roof slick as slate, and the guest house with its oak door open to travellers. Monasteries, you learn, are not only places of prayer. They are also places where wet people gather and try not to drip on everything important. Inside the guest house, warmth comes unevenly from a hearth built into the far wall. Rushes cover the floor, fresher near the door and flatter near the benches where many weary backsides have argued with them. The air smells of wet wool smoke, boiled beans, beeswax, old leather, and a faint medicinal bitterness from herbs drying near the rafters. A lay brother in a brown habit takes cloaks and hangs them on pegs, though they continue to drip as if determined to become a stream. He gives each traveller a wooden bowl of thin bean pottage and a heel of coarse bread. It is not a feast, but it is hot and in winter that makes it nearly noble. You sit on a bench with Nora Maud Cecily and the dog beneath your feet. Rain taps the roof in thousands of small fingers. The monastery bell rings for the next office deeper and closer than the town bells, and its sound moves through the room like a hand smoothing a blanket. A monk crosses the guest house carrying a tray of cups filled with small ale. His face is narrow, kindly, and tired. He has ink on his sleeve, which means he is either a scribe or has lost a fight with the bottle. Near the hearth, 2 widows warm their hands. A carter unwraps a bandage from his wrist. A pilgrim dries a string of badges' shells and tiny lead saints by holding them dangerously close to the flames. Some swear that a badge warmed at a monastery hearth keeps away road fever for 3 days. Others say it keeps away nothing except sensible behaviour, especially when the lead grows hot enough to burn fingers. No one can quite agree, but the pilgrim blows on his thumb and looks spiritually unconvinced. The rain holds everyone in place, and when people are held in place, stories begin to loosen. One widow called Mother Joan speaks first of a girl she knew who married at 16 to a baker's son and never lacked bread, though she spent 30 years smelling of rye and waking before dawn. Happy enough, she says, turning her palms toward the fire, there are worse lives than warm ovens. The other widow, Mistress Alisoun, sniffs. Warm ovens do not make gentle husbands. Mother Joan nods, not offended, nor do cold ones. The girls listen without seeming to listen. Dame Aveline stands near the wall with the ink-sleeved monk speaking low about parchment, scraps candle ends, and perhaps the repair of a school psalter. Yet her eyes move now and then toward Nora. A traveller in a patched green cloak says his sister married late past 23, after everyone had decided she would remain with their mother and keep hens until Judgment Day. Then a widowed carpenter passing through broke his cart axle, stayed 3 weeks to mend it, and married her by Easter. Good marriage, he says. She keeps his accounts. He fears her arithmetic. This earns a soft laugh around the hearth. Nora smiles into her cup. Mistress Alisoun says she herself married early, before she understood that a house may be full of people and still lonely. She says it gently, with no sharpness, toward the dead man whose ring she still wears on a cord beneath her gown. He was not cruel, she adds. That is a sentence women are taught to call gratitude. The room grows quieter. Rain fills the silence. Beans simmer in the pot. Somewhere in the inner cloister, monks chant in a low river of sound the Latin words blurred by stone and weather, until they become less like speech than breathing. Dame Aveline comes to sit beside Nora. She offers no lecture. She merely takes a piece of bread, breaks it, and says, "A life may be safe and still ask something of the soul." Nora looks at her. And if the soul asks for too much, the teacher's keys shift softly beneath her cloak. Then one learns which hunger can be fed and which must be carried carefully. Even now it is hard to tell whether this comforts Nora or deepens the ache. You feel both possibilities sit beside her on the bench. The ink-sleeved monk approaches and sets a small clay cup near the carter with the sore wrist. It holds a greenish salve of comfrey plantain and goose grease. He says it will draw out swelling. The carter asks whether the moon is right for it. The monk sighs with the expression of a man who has heard this question every damp week of his life. The moon may assist, he says, but so may not falling off the cart again. This is accepted as both medicine and theology. Mother Joan then tells of a woman who never married at all, but became keeper of the abbey laundry, mistress of key sheets, soap, ash, lye, and gossip from 5 villages. She slept alone, Joan says, and snored like a contented ox. No one knows whether this is praise or warning. Perhaps it is both. Nora watches the rain slide down the shutter cracks. Her red thread is not with her now. It remains at the shrine. Yet the question tied there seems to have followed her into this warm, smoky room. Early, late, happily, unhappily, not at all, the stories do not form one answer. They form a circle of candles, each flame small, each showing a different corner of the dark. When the rain finally softens, the guest house does not hurry to release you. The hearth glows low, bowls are stacked, wet cloaks steam on their pegs. The dog sleeps with his nose on Nora's shoe. Outside the bell rings again, and its sound drifts over the soaked road toward town. You rise slowly, carrying the warmth of bean pottage smoke and many women's unfinished stories, while Nora steps beside you into the washed evening, not freed from expectation, but less alone beneath it. By the time you come back through the town gate, evening has gathered itself into a blue-black cloak, and the rain has left every roof shining as though polished by a cold and disagreeable servant. Nora walks beside Dame Aveline, their hems dark with mud, their ribbons damp and dulled. The one-eared dog trots close to Nora's shoes, having decided that a schoolgirl in difficult circumstances is still more promising than monks with strict opinions about crumbs. At the market square, lanterns hang from hooks along the church wall. Tonight is not a grand feast, not the sort sung about by minstrels who have never washed a trencher, but a modest winter gathering before the leaner weeks tighten their belts. Families bring what they can: coarse bread, onions, beans, smoked fish. A little cheese, dried apples, oatcakes, and 2 precious beeswax candles set near the high table, because even poverty enjoys pretending for an evening. The parish room has been swept and laid with fresh rushes mixed with rosemary. Some swear rosemary underfoot keeps quarrels sweet-tempered, though no one can quite agree whether it calms angry hearts or merely makes angry boots smell better. Women lay trenchers on the tables, thick slices of stale bread that serve as plates, and afterward become food for servants' dogs or the especially hungry. Mistress Isolde waits near the doorway. She has changed Nora's damp blue ribbon for the saved, dull red one from the dowry chest. It is not bright enough to shout, not costly enough to invite envy, but it catches the firelight kindly. Nora touches it once, as if feeling the chest's open shadow again linen pewter medals Rosemary her father's spoon. Across the room stands Tomlin, the cooper's son. He wears a clean wool tunic, a modest belt buckle, and boots brushed free of the worst mud. His chipped tooth shows only when he smiles cautiously, as if smiles themselves must be measured before use. You take a place along the wall close enough to see far enough to avoid being asked whether you've brought anything. Mother Sabine sits by the fire with her fox fur collar, dry her wax tablet nowhere in sight, which somehow makes her seem more dangerous. The bell rings once, and the priest blesses the food with a short prayer that covers bread, fish, ale, guests' winter stores, and the hope that no one disgraces themselves before the final cup. Then the meal begins. Nora is seated not beside Tomlin never so plainly, but across and a little down from him. Her mother sits near enough to observe posture. His mother sits near enough to observe everything else. Dame Aveline sits farther down the bench with the girls breaking bread neatly, her keys quiet beneath her cloak. The dog settles under the table where hope is most likely to fall in edible form. Ale is poured, pottage is ladled, smoked fish is divided with care so exact it feels almost legal. Nora takes bread, waits serves Mistress Isolde first, then herself. Tomlin notices. His mother notices him noticing. Mother Sabine notices both, and takes a satisfied bite of oat cake. Conversation begins with rain roads, the miller's measure, the repaired cartwheel, and the scandalous price of salt, then edges toward more delicate ground. Tomlin's mother asks whether Nora enjoys household accounts. Nora says she finds them useful, an answer polished smooth enough to roll across any table. Tomlin asks whether the comfrey helped the widow's hands. Nora looks surprised that he knows of it, then says she hopes so. He says his father used comfrey on split knuckles from barrel hoops, though he also believed wrapping the hand in warm cabbage drew pain out by morning. No one can quite agree whether cabbage draws pain damp or only ridicule, but several elders nod as if the remedy deserves respect. The fiddler begins a slow tune warm enough to soften the room. A few people sing the chorus. Their voices are plain worn and low, carrying over the candles like smoke. Nora listens, hands folded near her cup. Tomlin's gaze crosses the table once twice, then retreats to his trencher, as if bread has suddenly become fascinating. You can feel the performance unfolding. Girls must be pleasant, but not eager, skilled, but not proud, quiet, but not dull, modest, but not invisible. Young men must appear steady, hard-working, sober, and capable of lifting barrels without suggesting they know they are being watched lifting barrels. Mothers must seem casual while calculating linen temperament debts, tools kin, and whether another woman's household smells properly of stored apples and ash soap. The whole feast becomes a loom, and every glance is a thread drawn tight. Halfway through the meal, Mother Sabine asks Tomlin to pass the salt to Nora, a simple request, a salt cellar crossing a table. Yet several heads turn slightly like birds hearing grain scatter. Tomlin passes it carefully, not touching Nora's hand. Nora thanks him without looking too long. The salt arrives safely, which is apparently enough for Widow Parnell to murmur that good hands do not fumble what is costly. Later the music quickens. A ring dance forms near the hearth, slow at first, because the floor is uneven, and because everyone remembers the old story of a bride who fell during a winter dance and took it as an omen. Some swear her marriage proved unhappy because of the fall. Others say the fall happened because her shoes were too large, and the marriage because her husband was too small in kindness. Those who tell the tale never fully agree. Nora is drawn into the ring by Maud. Tomlin is drawn in by his cousin. For a few turns they are near each other, hands separated by two dancers' faces lit and shadowed by fire. Nora smiles, then not the practiced greeting from the schoolhouse, but a real small smile that comes and goes before anyone can claim it. Tomlin sees it. He looks less like a prospect and more like a young man trying very hard not to step on anyone. When the dance ends, Mistress Isolde offers Nora a cup. No lecture, no command. Only ale and a hand briefly over hers. Near the feast's end, Tomlin approaches with his mother beside him, and asks very properly whether Nora and Mistress Isolde will accept a visit after Candlemas, only to speak only if it pleases them, only with Dame Aveline, or another witness present. Polite words, careful words, words dressed warmly against scandal. Nora looks at her mother. Dame Aveline watches from across the room. Mother Sabine pretends to study an oatcake. Nora answers, "We may hear what is said. It is not yes. It is not no. It is a door opened only as wide as a candle flame." The bell sounds outside, calling the town toward night. People rise, gathering bowls, cloaks, leftovers, and opinions. The dog emerges triumphant with a piece of trencher bread. Nora stands beside you as the candles burn low, her red ribbon dimming in the smoke, her future not chosen, but nearer circling gently through bread glances and the careful manners of a winter feast. The feast loosens slowly as winter feasts do, not ending all at once, but thinning by cups, cloaks, yawns, and mothers deciding that enough people have seen enough of what they came to see. The musicians pack away their fiddle and little drum. The last trencher scraps are gathered for dogs, pigs, and anyone too practical for shame. Smoke presses beneath the rafters, softening every face into amber and grey, while the two beeswax candles near the high table burn down into shallow golden pools. Nora leaves with Mistress Isolde, Dame Aveline, Maud Cecily. You and the one-eared dog who carries himself with the grave satisfaction of a knight returning from conquest. Outside the night has cleared after rain. Puddles hold trembling pieces of moon. The road shines black between the houses. Somewhere beyond the north gate the repaired cartwheel creaks faintly, as a late carter leads his horse toward the stable yard. The sound follows you familiar now, almost companionable, a reminder that cracked things can continue if bound carefully enough. Mistress Isolde's house glows with a low hearth when you enter. The room is warmer than the lane, though warmth here is always negotiated, never granted freely. A pot hangs above the embers with enough pottage left for morning. The rushes have been swept into decent order. The dowry chest rests beneath its wool covering near the wall, quiet as a sleeping animal. Nora removes the dull red ribbon from her braid and lays it on the table beside the salt packet, the lamp wicks, and a small bone comb. Mistress Isolde speaks of practical things first. Tomlin's visit after Candlemas must be witnessed. His mother must come. Dame Aveline may sit in if she will. No promises are made by hearing words. No promise is broken by caution. These sentences are arranged like stones along a path, each meant to keep Nora from stumbling. Nora nods, her face still and tired. The dog curls near the hearth and immediately begins dreaming, paws twitching, as if chasing a sausage through paradise. Dame Aveline stays a little while to help count the remaining feast bread Mistress Isolde has brought home wrapped in cloth. Maud and Cecily say good night at the door, giggling softly over Tomlin's careful salt passing, until Dame Aveline's look turns them into sober pilgrims. Then they vanish into the dark lane, their whispers trailing behind them like ribbon ends. When the house quiets, Mistress Isolde asks Nora to fetch the wool blanket from the chest. The night may grow colder, and the guest pallet by the wall where you are to sleep has only a thin cover. Nora takes the key from her mother's hand. The little iron teeth gleam. She kneels before the chest, lifts the wool covering and opens the lid. Cedar, lavender, linen, and hidden rosemary breathe out again. You stand nearby holding a rushlight while Nora reaches into the chest. She lifts the wool blanket, the one with the brown thread, border the one that held the brittle sprig of rosemary before. As she draws it upward, Something pale slips from between its folds and falls onto the floor without sound. Not a medal, not thread, not a herb charm. A folded letter. For a moment no one moves. The rushlight trembles in your hand, making the shadow of the chest climb the wall. Mistress Isolde looks at the letter, then at Nora. Dame Aveline, who had been tying the breadcloth, grows very still. Even now it is hard to tell whether the room has discovered a secret or the secret has finally grown too tired to stay hidden. Nora bends quickly, but Mistress Isolde is closer. She picks up the letter. The paper is not fine parchment, only a scraped scrap folded twice, sealed not with wax but tucked into itself. A little rosemary leaf clings to the crease. Mistress Isolde holds it as if it might burn. "Nora," she says. Nora's throat moves. It was only words. Words in this house are never only words. Dame Aveline steps nearer her keys, quiet at her belt. "May she read it herself?" she asks softly. Mistress Isolde's fingers tighten. You can see the mother in her pulled two ways toward authority, toward fear, toward the old right to know what her daughter hides beneath wool meant for marriage. But the evening has been long, and perhaps the guest house stories still linger, and perhaps the red thread at the shrine has tied something open in all of them. She gives the letter to Nora. Nora unfolds it slowly. Her handwriting covers the scrap in neat, small lines. She reads aloud because silence would be heavier. She writes that she does not hate the thought of marriage. She writes that Tomlin seems kind, that his hands are careful, that a household with steady work is not a thing to scorn. She writes that she loves her mother, and knows every sheet in the chest carries years of saving, washing, mending, and doing without. She writes that she is ashamed to feel fear when everyone has worked so hard to make her safe. Then her voice lowers. She writes that she wants time. Not endless time, not foolish time, not time to wander in pride, but a little more breath before the door closes. She wants to read the Saints' Book all the way through. She wants to learn accounts beyond household sums, to copy letters for Dame Aveline to understand why some herbs cure and others only comfort. She wants to walk once to the Abbey Library, if such a visit can be allowed, and see the manuscripts the ink-sleeved monk tends beneath winter light. She wants to know whether wisdom must always be folded into linen or whether it may stand upright for a while before being carried into someone else's house. The fire makes a small collapsing sound. Outside, the bell for Compline drifts through the shutters late and soft. The dog opens, one eye decides human sorrow does not resemble food, and sleeps again. Nora reads the last lines. She writes that she fears turning 20, not because she believes the town fully right, but because she has heard its voice all her life. She fears becoming a warning told at gates. She fears marrying before her soul has caught up with her body. She fears refusing kindness and finding only regret. She fears accepting kindness and losing herself quietly without anyone meaning harm. When she finishes, the letter trembles in her hand. Mistress Isolde sits on the stool by the hearth. Her face looks older in the rushlight, not hard but worn thin by memory. "I was promised at 17, she says after a long while. "I did not know your father well. I learned him after." Nora looks down. "Were you happy?" Mistress Isolde gazes into the embers. No one can quite agree whether such questions should be asked after dark when truth grows less obedient. At last she says, "Often enough. Not always. He was gentle. He was tired. I was young. We made a life, and then fever took him before I had finished understanding it." Dame Aveline takes the letter gently, not to keep it, but to smooth the crease. A careful mind has written carefully. Mistress Isolde wipes one thumb over the edge of the wool blanket. "You should have told me. I did not know how." "No," her mother says very softly. "Perhaps I did not leave room." The words settle warmer than the fire. Nothing is solved, no visit is cancelled, no promise is made. Yet the room changes. The dowry chest remains open, but it no longer looks like a mouth about to close. It looks for tonight at least like a box holding many things: linen medals, rosemary, a father's spoon, a mother's labour, and now a daughter's written wish to breathe. Mistress Isolde folds the letter again and places it back inside the blanket, not hidden this time, but kept. She locks the chest only after Nora lays her hand once on the lid. You take the blanket offered for your palate, warmed faintly by cedar and secrets. As you lie down near the wall, the hearth dims, the house settles, and the bell's last note fades into the rafters. Nora sits beside the dying fire, not free from fear, not free from love, but seen, and in this small smoky room being seen feels like the first quiet mercy before dawn. Morning comes pale after the letter, as if the sun has learned to enter Mistress Isolde's house without waking old fears too quickly. You rise from the pallet with the wool blanket warm around your shoulders, carrying the scent of cedar, lavender and rosemary from the dowry chest. The hearth is only a red eye beneath ash. Nora kneels before it, feeding thin sticks into the glow, while Mistress Isolde measures oats into a pot. No one speaks of the letter at first. Important things often need to sit quietly among ordinary things: oats, ash, water, bread, smoke. The days that follow move with winter slowness. Candlemas passes with blessed tapers carried through the church, their flames shaking in the draught. Some swear that a Candlemas candle kept near the bed drives away storms, fever, and bad dreams of marriage contracts. Others say it mostly leaves wax on the chest lid if watched carelessly. No one can quite agree, but Mistress Isolde saves a small half-burned candle and wraps it in cloth, because doubtful protection is still protection when you love someone. Tomlin's family visits properly witnessed by Dame Aveline and Widow Parnell, who sits near the hearth, pretending to mend a sleeve while hearing every breath. Barrels are discussed. Work through Lent is discussed. Linen is not counted aloud, though everyone knows it is present in the room like another guest. Nora answers plainly, not with the practiced softness of fear, but with a steadier voice. Tomlin listens. That becomes the thing you notice most. He only says a cooper's accounts are troublesome, and a household with 2 minds awake may lose fewer coins, so the town moves slowly toward a speaking at the chapel. Not a wedding, not yet. A formal betrothal, perhaps, or the beginning of one hands before witnesses' words, before the priest families near enough to hear, and the village ready to say it knew all along. The evening chosen is cold and clear. Frost gathers on roof thatch. The lanes shine under torchlight. People emerge from houses in cloaks and hoods, their breaths rising white as they walk toward the parish chapel. The one-eared dog follows you with solemn purpose, though whether for history, companionship, or dropped bread remains fit for debate. You walk beside Nora and Mistress Isolde. Nora wears her plain blue ribbon, not the red one from the feast. Her mother has allowed this without comment. At Nora's sleeve, sewn inside with small, careful stitches, is the rubbed medal of the uncertain saint from the packet. Some swear an unknown saint is best for unknown futures. Even now it is hard to tell whether that is wisdom or desperation with better manners. The chapel waits with its oak door open and torches in iron brackets. Their flames bend in the wind, gilding the threshold frozen mud, and neighbours trying to look pious while arranging themselves for a good view. Inside, rushes cover the cold floor. Beeswax candles burn near the altar. A little reliquary rests beneath faded gold thread said to hold a splinter from a saint's staff, though some swear it is old pear wood blessed by a priest who preferred not to argue. Those who tell the tale never fully agree, but everyone bows anyway. Dame Aveline stands near the front keys at her belt, her eyes calm. Mother Sabine is there too, looking less like a meddler tonight, and more like a keeper of difficult doors. The ink-sleeved monk from the guest house has come to lend the priest a book for the prayers, and you notice him glance once at Nora, then at Dame Aveline, as if he knows more than he will say. Monks have a way of seeming suspicious even when simply carrying parchment. Tomlin waits with his mother. He looks clean nervous and very young beneath all the town's expectations. His hands, broad from barrel hoops and tools, open and close once at his sides. When Nora steps near, he bows. She lowers her head. The priest begins with a prayer for guidance, peace, and households founded in charity. His voice is soft because the chapel is small, and winter has made everyone tired enough to listen. Then the questions begin. The priest asks whether the families come freely to speak of a future bond. Mistress Isolde says yes, though caution threads the word. Tomlin's mother says yes. Asked whether he understands kindness, provision, patience, and faithful conduct, Tomlin says, as much as a man may before he is tested. A few brows lift. It is a better answer than expected. Then the priest turns to Nora. The chapel holds still around her. You hear torch flames outside the dog shifting near the door, the faint drip of thaw from the eaves, the soft crackle of candle wicks. Nora's face is pale, but her voice does not fail. I understand duty, she says, and I understand kindness when I see it. I do not refuse what has been offered, but I ask that no full promise be spoken tonight. The words do not ring out, they settle. That is somehow stronger. The priest asks gently what she seeks. Nora says she seeks time until Easter to learn under Dame Aveline copy accounts, visit the Abbey Library once under proper watch, and let her mind walk beside her duty instead of trailing behind it. She receives Tomlin's visits if he still wishes them, but she cannot place her hand into a promise while her soul is still arriving. There, it is not disobedience, not flight, not scorn, readiness. No one moves quickly. In a medieval chapel, quick movement usually means fire bees or scandal, and no one wants to encourage any of these. The priest looks at Mistress Isolde. Mistress Isolde looks at Tomlin. Tomlin looks at his own hands, then at Nora. I can wait until Easter, he says. Barrels do not improve by being bound before the staves are ready. It is not poetry exactly, but it is kind, and in the chapel's cold candlelight kindness stands taller than cleverness. A low murmur passes through the neighbours. Some approve, some do not. Some are already preparing to say they approve from the beginning, depending on how this turns out. Mother Sabine exhales and says, a delayed promise is better than a cracked one. No one can quite agree later whether she invented the saying on the spot, but it sounds old enough to be useful. The priest declares there will be no betrothal spoken tonight, only an intention to continue in honest witness until Easter, with council visits and no binding words. He blesses both families because blessings are cheaper than certainty and often more comforting. Dame Aveline gives Nora the smallest smile. Mistress Isolde takes her daughter's hand in public, which says more than a speech. When you step back through the chapel door, the torches bend in the wind. The town stands beneath the winter stars, surprised but not shattered. The dog trots ahead, unimpressed by delayed contracts. Behind you, the candles still burn near the uncertain relic, and Nora breathes the cold air as if for the first time in many days it has room inside it. After the chapel empties, the town does not know quite what to do with itself. It has come expecting a promise, or at least the shape of one, the way people come to a winter fire expecting heat smoke, and perhaps a little judgment about everyone else's boots. Instead, it receives a delay until Easter, a girl's steady voice, a cooper's patient answer, and a blessing placed over uncertainty like a wool cloak over cold shoulders. So the neighbours linger in the lane beneath the torches, murmuring softly, reshaping the evening into something they can carry home. You step down from the chapel threshold beside Nora. Frost shines underfoot. The one-eared dog trots ahead, then turns back as if checking that the humans have survived their own ceremonies. Tomlin speaks with his mother near the churchyard wall, his head bent, his hands tucked beneath his cloak. Mother Sabine stands beneath the yew tree looking at the stars with an expression that suggests she has negotiated with worse things than delay. Dame Aveline speaks to the ink-sleeved monk near the chapel door, and though he is only holding a prayer book, he still manages to look as if he may be smuggling dangerous wisdom under his habit. The priest closes the oak door behind him, leaving the candlelight inside. The uncertain relic remains near the altar, still quietly being either a saint splinter or old pear wood with confidence. No one can quite agree, and perhaps tonight no one needs to. Some things are allowed to help without proving themselves. The bell rings once more, not loudly, not commandingly, only a low note passing over roof, lane, gate and field. After the last bell movement begins again, families drift home in pairs and small clusters. Cloaks brush. Wooden pattens click. A child carried half asleep against a father's shoulder mutters that the chapel was cold. This is widely considered the most accurate statement of the evening. Mistress Isolde walks beside Nora without pressing questions into the air. Her hand rests lightly on her daughter's sleeve near the hidden medal sewn there. For once the touch does not guide Nora forward or hold her back. It simply remains. You follow them through the lane where the feast room windows have gone dark, past the market stalls folded for night, past the Reeves post, past the repaired cartwheel leaning near the stable yard. Its iron rim catches a little torchlight. Bound, cracked, useful, waiting for morning. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether signs appear because heaven sends them, or because tired people are very good at finding meaning in farm equipment, but the wheel looks almost gentle tonight. At Mistress Isolde's house the hearth is low but alive. Nora lays aside her cloak. The blue ribbon comes loose from her braid and she places it on the table, beside the half-burned Candlemas taper wrapped in cloth. Mistress Isolde adds wood to the fire, then measures barley into a pot for morning, because even a night of difficult tenderness does not excuse anyone from breakfast. Medieval life, you have learned, permits revelations, but only if someone remembers to soak the beans. Dame Aveline comes in for a little while, bringing the saint's book wrapped carefully in linen. She has spoken with the monk, she says. If weather allows, and if Mistress Isolde agrees, Nora may visit the Abbey Library after the next market day under proper company to copy a small passage and return before dusk. The permission is modest, guarded, fenced with conditions, yet it enters the room like spring air beneath a door. Nora does not speak at first, then she says thank you, and the words are so simple they almost disappear. Her mother looks at Dame Aveline, then at the book. Until Easter, she says. She may learn. Dame Aveline nods. Until Easter she may learn. After Easter she may also learn. Houses do not suffer from wise hands. The fire shifts, sending sparks briefly upward. Even now it is hard to tell whether Mistress Isolde smiles or merely lets sorrow loosen its grip on her face. But she does not refuse. The dowry chest is opened once more, not for counting, not for display, but to place Nora's letter within the wool blanket where it belongs openly now. The rosemary sprig rests beside it, brittle but fragrant. The medals lie in their corner. The pewter plate, the father's carved spoon, the shifts, the sheets, the ribbons all remain no longer proof that a door must close at once, but evidence that many hands have prepared for life in the only ways they knew. Nora touches the folded letter. I will still hear Tomlin, she says. I know, her mother answers, and I will still help with the chest. I know, and I do not wish to shame you. Mistress Isolde closes her eyes for one breath. You are not shame. The words are quiet, but they seem to warm the room more than the fire. Later, when Dame Evelyn has gone, you sit near the hearth while Mistress Isolde mends a sleeve. Nora trims a quill under careful light, and the dog sleeps with his nose on one paw. Outside, the town settles. Shutters close, latches drop. Somewhere a baby cries and is soothed. Somewhere a man coughs near a dying fire. Somewhere Mother Sabine is surely telling someone that she always considered Easter a sensible season for decisions. Rainwater drips from an eave into a barrel slow and steady. The monastery bell far beyond the wall answers the parish bell with a softer sound, and the two notes fade together into the dark. Nora dips the quill into a small pot of ink and writes one line on scrap parchment. Wisdom builds the house. She pauses, then adds in the road to it. The letters are small, careful, awake. You lie down near the wall beneath the wool blanket, the same one that smelled of cedar, lavender, and secrets. The rushes beneath you are uneven. The hearth is low. Smoke has darkened the rafters into a night sky of old soot. The one-eared dog sighs, chasing no doubt a dream in which legal proceedings are shorter and bread is more plentiful. Nora sits beside the fire a while longer, her face calm in the dimness, her future not settled, not escaped, not denied, but open enough for Easter, open enough for learning, open enough for kindness to prove itself slowly. And now the town grows quieter still. The last footsteps pass from the lane. The last ember folds inward, red beneath grey ash. You feel the warmth of the blanket at your shoulder and the cool breath of stone at your back, and both seem gentle now, as if the night has learned your shape. Far away beyond the gate, the pilgrim road lies under frost and starlight, holding its ruts, its shrines, its little knots of thread, its unanswered prayers. Nothing hurries there. Nothing demands an answer before dawn. In the house, Mistress Isolde's needle rests beside the mended sleeve. Nora's quill lies clean on the table. The blue ribbon, the Candlemas taper the carved spoon, and the folded letter sleep together in the soft reach of the firelight. Even the dowry chest seems less like a locked future now, and more like an old wooden heart holding what it can until morning. You breathe slowly. Smoke wool, lavender, barley. Cold stone and fading beeswax drift around you. The bells are silent for a while. The dog's breathing is deep and even. Outside, the roofs shine faintly beneath the moon, and the whole medieval town with all its worries, rules, hopes, gossips, saints, muddy lanes and small mercies settles down under the winter dark. There is no need to solve the road tonight. There is no need to open every door before sleep. For now there is only the hearth, the blanket, the softened hush, after the last bell and the quiet knowing that morning will come gently enough. Rest here. Let the old stones hold the cold away. Let the candlelight fade. Let the story loosen its hand little by little until only warmth remains.